Alrighty, well, it's good to have everyone here today. Always enjoy having some visitors with us. If you haven't been with us for a little while, we've been going through the book of Judges in our Sunday school hour. And we're on the last chapter, so Judges chapter 21, if you turn there, and we're in the last paragraph in my Bible of this book. We will probably get done a little early today, and I don't mean Brian's early, I mean truly early. So we'll just have some time of fellowship, hopefully before our services start this morning at 11. But we are wrapping up Judges chapter 21, and just a quick recap. This is the chapter that follows the battle between the tribe of Israel, or the nation of Israel, and the tribe of Benjamin in the city of Gibeah. Now, this battle comes on the heels of the men of Gibeah and their wickedness that they commit in chapter 19, where they abused the Levite's wife. They wanted the Levite as the man, but they abused his wife, and so much that she died. And word was sent out in a gory way that this sin had been present and that it needed to be dealt with. And so we see that it was dealt with, but dealt with in such a manner that the tribe of Benjamin went from about 45,000 people to 600 men. And so that's all that was left. And as we picked up last week in verse 21, we really touched on, although the tribe of Benjamin committed great evil with keeping safe the men of Gibeah, they refused to turn over the men of Gibeah in their wickedness. They wanted to protect them, whether it was they didn't want the rest of the tribes in their business or whatever it may have been. But even though they had committed this wickedness, their brothers, the other tribes, were still very concerned with how that tribe would continue on. They did not want to see it just cut off, excommunicated to die off. They had a heart for their brothers, even in the midst of their sin, their struggle, and they wanted to help them rebuild. They wanted to help them restore, as Galatians 6 talks a lot about. And so that's where we kind of pick up in 21. So in 21, they go to a city called, and if you look at it in verse 8, Jabesh Gilead, and they go to this city because no one came from that city to help fight the evil. And so they went in there and they killed everyone save the women that had not been with a man, the virgins. And they saved those ladies to be wives unto the men of Benjamin, the ones that survived. So that was 400 virgins. So there are still 200 men from Benjamin without a wife, because obviously they need a wife to help recreate or repopulate that tribe. And so that's really kind of where we stopped at. The elders now coming together to think, how do we get the rest of the 200 men of Benjamin who are in need of wives? And so we'll pick up in verse 16, and we'll read through the end of the chapter, and just look at some things in here, wrap up our study, and then again, I do covet your prayers on where we should go next. I have a feeling where we'll go, but I always want to confirm that with the Lord and whatever would please him. But in Judges 21, verse 16, then the elders of the congregation said, and again, the congregation is the whole nation of Israel, how shall we do for wives for them that remain? And again, that remain is those 200 men of Benjamin that are without wives from the 400 virgins, seeing the women are destroyed out of Benjamin. And they said, there must be an inheritance for them that be escaped of Benjamin, that a tribe be not destroyed out of Israel. Howbeit we may not give them wives of our daughters, for the children of Israel have sworn, saying, cursed be he that giveth a wife to Benjamin. Then they said, behold, there is a feast of the Lord in Shiloh, yearly in a place which is on the north side of Bethel, on the east side of the highway that goeth up from Bethel to Shechem, on the south of Lebanon. Therefore they commanded the children of Benjamin, saying, go and lie in wait in the vineyards, and see and behold, if the daughters of Shiloh come out to dance in dances, then come ye out of the vineyards, and catch you every man his wife of the daughters of Shiloh, and go to the land of Benjamin. And it shall be, when their fathers or their brethren come unto us to complain, that we will say unto them, be favorable unto them for our sakes, because we reserve not to each man his wife in the war. For ye did not give unto them at this time, that ye should be guilty. And the children of Benjamin did so, and took them wives according to the number of them that danced, whom they caught, And they went and returned unto their inheritance, and repaired the cities, and dwelt in them. And the children of Israel departed thence at that time, every man to his tribe and to his family, and they went out from thence, every man to his inheritance. In those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. Brother Brian, we lead us in a word of prayer, please.
Heavenly Father, Lord, as we come before you this morning, the privilege and the opportunity that we have to be here. Often we take it for granted. We know how blessed we are that we're able to have a building like this to come and worship, Lord. Where I can look around and see each and every one here, Lord, the desire for each one has to be here, Lord. Blessing that is that you give us that tonight, Lord. I know it's not natural. If it was left unto me, Lord, I'd be doing something else, I'd be somewhere else, Lord. I just thank you, Lord, that you took that from me.
Amen.
Place me in one of your true churches. Lord, I do pray this morning that you do Brother Matt stand before us, Lord, and preaches the sensible lesson that says that you bless him. Lord, even pray now your next hour to come, Lord. Pastor stands before us, Lord, that you bless him as well.
Amen.
You open support of the word. Brings forth what you have. You bless him. Lord, we pray for Brother Matt as he continues to teach Sunday school, Lord, that you just guide him in what he has next, Lord, what you have him bring. We pray for Jerry as he's away sick. Lord, it's that you heal him, Lord. Lord, thank you now for the day yesterday, the fall party, Lord, being able to get together with each and every one, Lord, for blessing that was. And thank you for Pastor and family for hosting that, Lord. Lord, I just pray that you just meet with us today, Lord. Just allow us to put this world to the side that we focus on what you have, Lord, that we can use it in life and serve you. Lord, thank you for who you are, what you do for us, the patience you show. Let's go this in Jesus' name.
Amen. So as we pick up in verse 16, we see that there, again, as we've talked about, there are still 200 men from the tribe of Benjamin who are in need of wives. The elders of the nation of Israel, so from all the tribes, meet again to discuss what they can do to not only keep their oath, as it's mentioned in verse 18, and that oath is a reference back to verse 1, and the men of Israel refused to give any of their daughters to the tribe of Benjamin as wives due to how they were acting. They were not in the will of the Lord at this time. They sided with evil, and we referenced that back to when the nation of Israel went and took the promised land. God told them not to make marriages with the people of Canaan because they would cause them to serve other gods. And so this oath they have that they would not allow their daughters for wives. So they were trying to keep their oath, but we see at the end of verse 17, they said their desire was that a tribe be not destroyed out of Israel. As we talked last week, and I just want to hit on it again, what a blessing to see the care for the tribe of Benjamin even after their previous actions. They had a desire to see that tribe continue. I pray, and really for myself, but all of us, I pray that we have a desire to see our brothers and sisters in Christ follow Christ, to continue on. I pray we have a desire to see our fellow churches, our sister churches, to remain faithful in the Lord as opposed to relish in their demise. May we be found praying for others, that the Lord would help them remain faithful, as opposed to talking of their shortcomings. There's no talk of the shortcomings of the tribe of Benjamin in this chapter. There's tribe of how would we help? And how often can we find ourselves with vain babbling about shortcomings of others without, one, looking at ourselves and seeing what we need to work on, but without lifting those up in prayer? Lifting them up in prayer, the Lord would help them. As Brother Brian just talked about, if left to my own, if I was the king in my life, I wouldn't be here. If I was the king in my life, I don't know where I'd be. I don't know what I'd be doing, but I know it wouldn't be honoring the Lord. I love it that we read in this chapter, even though I don't believe that they did everything the way the Lord wanted them to. You don't see any reference to, Lord, how should we provide them wives? They do things in their own mind, I think, as verse 25 kind of talks about. But we still see their desire for their brother. They see that desire for their brother, and there's no talk of, no one raises their hand and say, well, I know you want to give them wives, but remember what they did? They say, it doesn't matter. What happened has happened. How do we help them get back into the fold? Because as we read in verse 14, it talks there about how the nations went to the tribe of Benjamin to make peace. And it says in verse 14, and Benjamin came again at that time. I believe that means they came back into the fold. They restored that relationship. And now the desire is, let's not hash out the past. Let's talk about how we can take a step today and serve in the Lord and continue it on. And I know so often I can be so guilty of relishing in the demise of others and talking about shortcomings, as opposed to every time I think of it, praying for them. Praying for them, saying, Lord, help them. Because, Lord, I'd be just like him if it wasn't for you. And again, if I want to talk about someone's shortcomings, I have more than enough in myself to talk about. But again, may we be found praying for others, that they would remain faithful, that they would continue on, that another church, another life, another family may not be destroyed, and it would remain faithful to God. We see, though, in these first few verses, the elders reveal their plans for the tribe of Benjamin. There is a feast coming, as it says there, a feast to the Lord in Shiloh. Shiloh is the place where the Ark of the Covenant was at this time. That's where the presence of God was. That's where their center of worship was. And so there was a feast coming here. And in that feast, they would have these women dancing. And they mentioned that the men could lie in wait in the vineyards and then go and take a woman unto himself. Again, not the most romantic thing. Now, most likely, I would say, I don't know 100% for certain, but just trying to read and understand, you're introduced to many different feasts in Leviticus. I think the 3 feasts you're introduced to in Leviticus 26, and then they talk more about them in Deuteronomy 16. I believe with looking at the different feasts that were to be had, this is the Feast of the Tabernacles. I could be wrong, but it talks about gathering the wine, and obviously they're in the vineyards and they're dancing, so that leads me to believe, as well as some others believe, it could be the Feast of the Tabernacle, but it's not mentioned here, so it's probably not important. But there was some kind of feast happening. And the feast of the families from Shiloh and the surrounding cities would come to celebrate the Lord, come to honor him, come to remember him, the things that he had done. And I believe the reason why some of these scholars believe it's the Feast of the Tabernacle, and again, they could be wrong, we're all susceptible to being wrong, would be that at this feast, that is the only time that virgin Jewish women or non-married Jewish women would dance. They would dance in the vineyards. Now, again, sadly, the world as we know it today has polluted dance and what it is. It would not be a dance of what we would think today. The dance would be pure. It would be modest. It would really, truly be a way to point and express their holy joy over the occasion of the feast of the Lord. There would be no married women dancing, and that's another reason that makes me believe it is the Feast of the Tabernacle, because if you look at, we'll just turn there since we're going to have time today, Deuteronomy 16. So Deuteronomy 16, verse 13, says, Thou shalt observe the Feast of the Tabernacle 7 days. After that thou hast gathered into thy corn and thy wine. And thou shalt rejoice in the feast, thou and thy son and thy daughters and thy manservants and thy maidservants and the Levite, the stranger and the fatherless and the widow that are within thy gates. 7 days shalt thou keep a solemn feast unto the Lord thy God in the place which the Lord shall choose, because the Lord thy God shall bless thee in all thy increase and in all thy works and in thine hands. Therefore thou shalt surely rejoice. So at this Feast of the Tabernacle, when these ladies would be dancing, it would not be married women. It would be strictly just women who were not married, who were virgins, pure, holy joy dancing. It's not the dancing we would think of today. So back in our text, to get around this oath that had been taken to not give their daughters to marry the tribe of Benjamin men, they would encourage these men of Benjamin to lie in the vineyards and to, for lack of a better word, kidnap a wife, to take a wife. Not of the father or brother's will, as you can see down there in verse 22, when the father or brothers will come and complain. So it's not them giving it. It's not them knowing the plan. The elders are doing this plan without everyone present. And the elders here know that none of their daughters would be there. And so they are having this plan, encouraging the tribe of Benjamin to lie in wait and to come and to take a bride, take one to marry. So again, technically, if we get to the technicalities of it, which is sad that we have to, but the fathers did not give their daughters away. They were taken. So they are getting around this oath. And again, none of the daughters of any of the men that would allow, none of the men there that would allow their daughters to dance are in this meeting, so they would not be privy to this information, so they could be blameless in violating this oath. They would not know of the plan. Again, I thought a lot about and read a lot about. We don't see anywhere mentioned in here they reference the Lord on what to do. Now, again, the Lord allows all things to work out, even the things in our eyes that are bad, for His good. And we're thankful for a sovereign God. But one thing I love about an argument I love for the Bible being true, because so many times it is argued that, well, it's just a bunch of men who wrote about their lives and their victories. If you read the Bible, there is a lot of talk about men's failure and women's failure, people's failure. Usually, if you read an autobiography about somebody, you don't read a whole lot about their failures, outside of maybe a failure in war that led them to success. You read about the wickedness of men and women in this. You read about the wickedness of us as people. You read about the times we praise the Lord and the times the Lord has to chasten us. And I believe that is another indication of the fact that this is truly derived from the Holy Spirit, because He writes it all. It is a true look at it. You look at many people in the past and we'll read an autobiography about them, and it'll be the highlights. Sometimes we get to the lowlights where we see how often we fail, and it's sad to think that you would let these men come and kidnap these women just to make sure you don't violate an oath. Again, the Lord works things out for His good, but we can read this and think, well, this is probably not how we should let our daughters be taken as brides. We should reference the Lord. We should go to the Lord and ask for His wisdom and guidance. They do it great in in chapter 20, about seeking ways to defeat the tribe of Benjamin and the men of Gibeah. But here we see a reference to verse 25, that men did that what was right in their own eyes. So we see that this is their plan. The Ben and Benjamin will lay in wait in the vineyards. When these ladies come out and dance, you can go and take yourself a wife, kidnap yourself a wife. Now they are only to take themselves one. This is not a reference to open polygamy, to have multiple. They were to take themselves one wife, not to take many. And we read in verse 22 of our text here, it says, "And it shall be when the fathers or their brethren come unto us to complain, us as being the elders, that we will say unto them, Be favorable unto them for our sakes, because we reserve not to each man his wife in the war. For ye did not give unto them at this time that ye should be guilty." So we see they have a plan for the fathers and brothers of these women taken. If they come and complain about what happened, the elders who are making this plan will ask them to be understanding. It'll be a tough thing to be understanding of if you have a child, let alone a daughter. But they ask them to be understanding because in the battle they killed everybody. They killed all the women, the children, the livestock, and they ask him to be favorable unto them because of what happened in the war, and that at least their daughters who were to be taken would still be alive, would be able to help carry on the legacy of a tribe of Israel as opposed to being killed. And also referencing that you're not guilty of violating an oath because you were not privy to the information and you did not give them away they were taken. So we see this whole plan, what the tribe of Benjamin should do, how they should manipulate a feast of the Lord, and how they can help explain it away to the fathers and brothers. Reading verse 23, we see here that this plan was executed out. It says that each man took unto them wives according to their number, which again I believe is 1 to 1. So 200 men were there who needed a wife, 200 ladies were taken to be their brides. Again, the nation of Israel is not responsible in providing these men multiple wives to make their repopulating quicker. It was be one according to the number. It says they were caught and they returned unto their inheritances. And as we've learned through our study of Joshua and Judges now, the inheritance of these tribes was their land, where they were able to dwell in the promised land, and they were there able to repair the cities and repopulate them. And something I kind of noticed as I was reading through this again, is you see now in verse 23 through 24, obedience from the tribe of Benjamin. Last chapter, we saw rebellion. We saw that the nation came before the tribe of Benjamin and said, "Do you not know the wickedness that had been done?" And they said, "We will not give you the men of Gibeah. Get out." Here we see that in verse 14 that the tribe, that Benjamin came again. I believe they came back into the fold. There was peace there. The elders gave them wisdom. You're going to You're going to get a wife at this feast. You're going to take her back and go repair your city. And they did just that. Again, we see obedience through the tribe of Benjamin. What a good thing to see. Again, although I don't know if this is a plan from the Lord allowed it, but we see that the tribe of Benjamin did exactly what the elders commanded them to do, suggested that they do. The rebellion seems to be, at least the unity of the nation seems to be back in the fold, as opposed to the fighting or the, get out of my way, don't tell me what to do, what was in chapter 20. So after this was done, the tribe of Benjamin, along with every other tribe, went back to their land, went back to their inheritance. And although the public matters or affairs of serving in the army of a nation of Israel to rid the sin that was present was important, it's also important to be back home and take care of your home. There are things that, we as a church, we get together, there's work days that we have to do, right? And it's important to come and to help on a work day. It's important to come and go to a fall party to enforce the unity of the church. But that shouldn't take us away from the duties of us at our home. Men and women both have duties in our home. They're different duties, but you both have duties to your home. And we shouldn't put public affairs before that to our homes in disarray. And we see here that, yes, it was important for this nation to be here as an army, but they weren't interested in having a standing army like we do now. They were interested in getting back home and taking care of their homesteads. And I know it's been said many times. I think Brother Tom Ross talked about it Thursday. But if you don't take care of your home and lead your home, men, you're the leader. Women, you're the keeper. If you don't do that role, if you're not taking care of that, there's someone out there, and this whole world is begging to get a chance. They're begging to get some influence on your children. They're begging to get an influence on your home. They're begging to tell your wife, your children, whoever it may be, what they'd want them to do, as opposed to what the Lord wants them to do. Now, I didn't grow up being homeschooled. I went to public school and sadly saw and heard a lot. But I was so thankful that I had parents that were still in my rear end each day, letting me know what was right and wrong. I didn't just get to come home and speak foolishness. It was corrected. We have a great responsibility to do at home. And we see here that there was a great responsibility for these men to get back to their home and take care of their homes. May we not forget the importance of our duties at home. Although there is important duty here as a church, there's also great importance at home. And as we wrap up, verse 25, the end of this chapter shows us the way of thinking of these last chapters we have read, especially. Again, I believe this is the time. These last few chapters are before judges started sitting in place. But I would say that verse 25 explains these last few chapters as well as the world we live in today. Men or people did what they thought was right in their own eyes. They did not submit themselves fully to the ways and will of the Lord. They often took matters into their own hands, their own thoughts. And if we probably looked in the mirror today, we've probably done it this week. We've referenced our smarts, our wisdom, our process over the Lord's. We think, how can we handle something, as opposed to submitting ourselves and praying, Lord, how would you have me handle it? In chapter 21, again, we see where this nation cries out unto the Lord of their sorrow for their brothers, of their sin and consequences, which is what we ought to do. But then sadly, at least from what I see, and I could be wrong, very well could be, I see no reference to God on how to help them restore, how to help them bring back, how to help them attain wives, how to help them move forward. Yes, it's great to cry out and beg the Lord, Lord, please help this nation, help this tribe continue. But it doesn't mean that we get to cry to that and say, okay, let me do what I think's best. We should reference God in everything. Reference God each day. We should seek him early, as the Bible talks about. Because in verse 25, and left to our own ways, things will never go well. This nation has kicked out the 10 Commandments from courthouses, kicked out prayer from our schools, kicked out God in our classrooms. And then we wonder why things happen the way they do. It's because we were doing things that we thought was right. We took God out of it. And then we see what people think is right. Shooting up schools, drugs, all the stuff you see in schools nowadays. Now, I'm not going to even go there, but it's just, that's what happens when we do what's right in our own eyes. Chaos, sin. That's what I have written in my Bible. Chaos and sin will happen when we do what's right in our own eyes. Like I've said before, I don't believe Adam and Eve were in the garden too long before they sinned. Maybe a few hours. And they couldn't even not look at a tree. A simple command, really not a hard command. But they couldn't even do it. There was great counsel given in chapter 20, as we talked about, and how they should wage war, if they should go to war. They wept. Remember, they cried out to the Lord. They fasted. They offered sacrifices over and over and truly sought the Lord. And what happened? The Lord blessed them. The Lord gave them victory. And the Lord brought the nations back. But then, I know like myself, like I do, I go back to my old ways. And I think, okay, Lord, you got me out of that mess. This next one that comes up, I'll try first. And if I mess up, I'll go to you. Well, I can let you know if I try first, I will mess up. So I might as well just go to the Lord first. May we think of this, I think we're told, it's mentioned 3 times in this book of Judges, where it says, and there was no king in Israel. Every man did that was right in their own eyes. May we think about that often. We wake up and we start just going about our day without seeking the Lord. May we think of that and we see the sadness that is in this chapter, the wickedness that is done in this book. And may we help avoid that in our own lives. Because we all have people that are under our influence. We have children, church members, family, children of church members. They're all looking to us. We have coworkers, family, loved ones. I pray that we would not do what's right in our own eyes, but we would truly seek the Lord's will and do what's right in His. Because that's really all that matters. It's really all that matters. But I pray that the Lord's been blessed in this study, that He would help us to apply it. And wherever He chooses to lead us next, I pray He'd bless there. And I just ask for your prayers that wherever the Lord wants us to be, He'll guide us there. And everything that comes out of my mouth would honor and glorify Him. But even though we don't serve in a nation right now that has a king, all of our lives have a king, and that's God. It's Jesus Christ. And may He be ever present in our minds and our prayers and our actions. Brother Austin, will you dismiss us in our prayer, please?